Well, hello everyone. I'm Tyler Chrestman, and welcome to the Chrestman Conversation. I want to apologize in advance for something. I got some new equipment today. Those of you on the internet watching, those of you on YouTube are probably noticing we got a little bit of change. I got some new microphones, headphones. I got this mixing board. I am not an audiophile, so I'm going to be playing around with this a lot, trying to figure it out. I have a friend who is going to teach me a little bit in the ways of audio mixing coming up here pretty shortly. The cool thing about this new equipment setup is that it will allow me to start having some more guests on the podcast. I got two of these new microphones, these directional mics, so it'll be great. So that being said, anyone who wants to come on the podcast and talk about any variety of subjects, let me know. We are going to be open for some good, healthy conversations and or debates, depending on the tenor that you wish to take. But let me know. I am looking for good, entertaining, and interesting guests to come talk about some stuff. So there we go. Open invitation. And now let's move on into the other thing I remember. The other thing I wanted to talk about is thank everybody who commented on the last video. It kind of blew up. It was great. That was a big one for us. I didn't realize Kamala Harris was so entertaining of a figure that it would just bring everybody out, but it did, and I'm happy. I hope people liked it. I know a lot of people did not, but that's okay. That's kind of what it's about. It's about getting our opinions out there and opening up some conversations. Had some good debate in the comments there. A lot of nonsense, which it's the internet. It's the way it's going to work, but a lot of good, healthy conversation as well, which was nice. That being said, we're going to move into the topic of the day. Those of you who saw the title of the podcast today will know that we're going to talk about this racist company, Adidas. How dare they? How dare they exist in 2020 with the amount of racism that they have going on over there? We're going to talk about this New York Times podcast that got put out last week called, the title of it was called Protesting Her Own Employer. It was on the New York Times The Daily podcast, which I believe at one point, it might, and I don't know if it still has this title, but I think it was the second most listened to podcast, at least on Apple. Are the most subscribed to, I can't remember which one. The most listened to or the most subscribed to. I can't remember which one it was. But here, this is insane. This is just insane. So you're talking the New York Times, the most respected journalistic institution in the world. Now, I know people have problems with the New York Times. I certainly do. I wish that they were less biased than they were. But you know what you're getting with the New York Times. And the one thing you can say is that despite the bias, they are responsible for some fantastic reporting that goes on in the world. The actual journalists who work for the New York Times, they do good work. Own the bias, which is fine. Just know that the institution itself does a fairly good job. So that's why it's so frustrating when they take something like The Daily and they elevate it and they just throw nonsense into the conversation like this podcast. We're going to talk about exactly why I think that way, but it is. Do not mistake it for a second. It was absolutely nonsense. So, Adidas, why is it racist? Let's get into it, according to the people who think that Adidas is racist. So the podcast centered around this woman named Julia Bond. Julia Bond is an assistant designer, I believe is what her title is, at Adidas. So here's the thing about this person. She is not a serious individual. I don't know why. The New York Times is elevating this story. They are elevating this story, and they're going to have millions of people are going to be listening to this podcast. And the entire thing is based on this woman and it's her story. That's the entire podcast. It's this woman's story about how she wound up protesting Adidas, the company that she works for. The entire thing is just ridiculous. And let's go over why. So Julia Bond is I think assistant designer is actually her title, but I'm not 100% on that. Design assistant, whatever it was. So she interned at Adidas in the fall of winter of last year, 2019, for about 4 to 5 months. Worked on some things. It was great. She said she really enjoyed it. Well, she got hired in February of this year. Okay, so we're in August. It's the 8th month of the year. She got hired in the 2nd month of the year. She got hired in February of this year. And then you know that this woman, she's on the New York Times. There's millions of people going to be listening. You're going to come with your best. So why is Adidas racist? What do you got for us, Julia Bond? What evidence are you about to offer that this company is racist? Come on. Come with your best. You know she's going to lead. She's going to hit you with that hardcore racism that's happening at Adidas. Well, she lists 2 examples. She's got 2. 2 examples of what she calls overt racism at Adidas. How these 2 things, you know, again, she's leading with her best. This is the New York Times. You better swing that heavy bat. Come with the hard hitter. These are the 2 forms of overt racism, Adidas. What's going on in that company? We need to know. We demand answers. Well, here we go. Example number 1 from Julia Bond, assistant designer at Adidas, about the overt racism at that company. Example number 1, her supervisor or team manager on his personal Instagram account took a screenshot of a guy who tried to join his network on LinkedIn. It was an Asian guy, and his name was Bruce Lee. And the caption on that screenshot of Bruce Lee said, "Enter the Dragon." Wow. I know that as a white man, I will go ahead and just speak for the entire Asian community and just say we grieve for such egregious missteps. I can't believe it. I can't believe someone could be so racist as to point out that someone with the name Bruce Lee shares that name with the most famous martial artist of all time. If you think that this is racist, if you think that pointing out, oh my gosh, there's a guy trying to join my LinkedIn network, his name's Bruce Lee, that's funny. Why is it funny? It's not funny because he's Asian. It's funny because he shares the name with one of the most famous individuals of the last century, Bruce Lee. Incredibly famous, ubiquitous in popular culture. Everyone knows who Bruce Lee is. It is. Do you think this is mocking Asians? If it was a white guy and his name was Bruce Lee, would that guy have made the same joke? Would he have said the same thing? Possibly, because you're not making fun of Asians. You're not making fun of Asians. You're making fun of the fact that someone has the name of an incredibly famous individual from history. That's the joke. The joke is not he's Asian. Let's, what she says, make a caricature out of Asian culture, right? She's make a caricature out of Asians. That's not what this is. And if you think that's what this is, you're an idiot. Like this is not an example of racism. She uses it. She says it's like, it would be like if a black guy had the name Will Smith and you put the caption "getting jiggy with it" underneath it. Again, that's your overt racism. If somebody has the name Will Smith to point out the fact, hey, you know this incredibly famous A-list actor? You share a name with him. That's kind of funny. That's not anti-black. It's not. It's ridiculous to think that it's anti-black to point out that somebody named Will Smith, it's like, oh, that's funny. Will Smith is incredibly famous. Bruce Lee is incredibly famous. I don't care if you're Asian or you're white or you're black. If your name is Bruce Lee, it's kind of funny because it's like, oh, what did your parents like martial arts? That's pretty funny. I mean, who cares? Who cares? And again, this isn't even the company of Adidas at this point. This is just some guy's private Instagram feed. Now, you might not like the joke. You might think that you probably shouldn't call out people from LinkedIn who are trying to join your network. That's fine. But this is an example of overt racism. So how does this progress? Well, Julia Bond, she says, it just didn't sit well with her. She couldn't get over it. This is the quote, his actions were destructive, end quote. It's so destructive to point out that somebody with the name Bruce Lee is named Bruce Lee. Oh my God, I can't believe it. This is the worst thing that's happened since the Holocaust, Julia Bond. I can't believe you had to live through a man pointing out that someone with the name Bruce Lee has the name Bruce Lee. I can't believe it. I still can't get over it. And so what did Julia Bond do? Well, she went to HR at Adidas, and they explained the entire situation. And they said that HR, if you can believe this, was dismissive. They said, well, I don't think he meant anything by it, and we'll have a chat with him, and we'll see what happens. And you know what happened? They had a chat with the guy, and he took the post down. The Instagram post disappears. It's off the internet because HR talked to him. And Julia Bond said nothing happened. Nothing else happened. No, there was nothing else. We didn't get enough. Okay. All right. So first example, the number one example that she leads with, by the way, demonstrating why she wound up protesting her employer. Someone on their own personal Instagram who worked for Adidas made a joke about an Asian guy named Bruce Lee sharing the name of an incredibly famous martial artist named Bruce Lee. That's the number one example that she came up with. Again, already starting off ridiculous. And by the way, let's point out again, she was hired in February of this year. It is now August. It has been 6 months. She was less than 2 months into her job when she goes to HR with her first complaint. Less than 2 months. It's just to demonstrate the kind of person we're probably dealing with. So then she says time passed. Not a lot of time, mind you. Again, she's only worked there for 6 months. Time passed. And there was this thing, this project that Adidas started putting out that said, I think they called it the inspiration wall. So along all their offices throughout the world, they would put up these basically picture collages, hundreds of pictures on the wall, which were different colors and themes, and they were supposed to be inspiring, and they were supposed to help you design things. Well, one day someone comes to her in the office and says, "Oh my God, did you see the picture of the Confederate flag on the wall, on the inspiration wall?" And she says, "What? How could this be? This, you're making it up." And so they go to this collage, hundreds of pictures on the wall. And there's a picture of an Asian guy riding a skateboard, and he's got an American or a Confederate flag T-shirt on. And Julia Bond, that hero, that heroine, she was not going to stand for this. She goes directly to HR and says, "I demands an apology from leadership." And they said they need to implement systems to protect the black employees from such harm that they can come to in this corporation. So there's a global meeting with the head of the company coming down and doing talks. And she says that they basically just sidelined all the concerns and all the complaints, and that they didn't really listen. They didn't really listen to Julia Bond, assistant designer with 2 months of experience in this company. They didn't listen to Julia Bond. And it didn't sit right with her. And then she says there were other smaller examples. Like people would say something like, "Julia, you act so white." Not a great thing to say to someone. Kind of an ignorant thing to say to someone. But it demonstrates that the entire company is systemically racist because some idiot in the 60,000 employees made a comment about Julia acting so white. Okay, that person, were they in leadership? She fails to mention it. I doubt so, because I'm sure she would have mentioned it. And somebody made a comment about Julia's hair being fluffy. I don't know what Julia Bond looks like, but I imagine she has fluffy hair. And if someone pointed that out, it's because they clearly are anti-black and anti-black hair, because they said, "Oh, Julia, your hair is so fluffy." We're not allowed to comment on hair, people. Everyone should know this at this point. If you comment on someone's hair, you clearly hold racism deep within your heart. These are the two examples that this woman lists. Again, coming with your hardcore examples of racism at Adidas. The two things that she lists are a joke on some guy's private Instagram that she claims is racist and I think is nonsense. And again, if you think that that's racist, you've never had problems in your life. You've really never encountered much hardship in your life. If you are overly concerned about that joke, if you think that joke is anti-Asian in any way, you clearly are not a rational person, because that is just so not anti-Asian. It's so obviously not racist that in order to make that joke racist, you have to have a perception of the world that is so distorted from reality. I don't know how to engage with that, because you're not going to make inroads with someone who thinks that joke is so problematic that they demand a mea culpa from the entire company. So Julia Bond, martyr on the cross of fighting systemic racism. She wrote an open letter to the company talking about all the ways in which the company has sidelined her complaints and ignored the problems within its own corporate walls. She wrote this public letter and released it, sent it to Adidas, posted it publicly, released this letter into the open. And you know what happened from the letter? People in upper management, people in the senior offices of Adidas, they reached out to her to set up a meeting to address her complaints. And you know what she did? She refused them. She said, I knew at this point that nothing was going to happen at this company, that they weren't going to change. They were just going to ignore my complaints. So she didn't even meet with the people who she wrote the letter to. She writes a letter saying, racism exists in the company. We need to do something about it. And then they reach out and say, well, let's talk about this. Let's help us address it. And she says, no, because I know nothing's going to change. Okay, this is a person who wants attention. This isn't a person who's looking to create change in a system. This is a person who wants attention at this point. And so the upper manager reaches out. They say, hey, let's talk. She says, no, I don't want to talk. And so then what she does is every day she goes on her lunch break. She takes a sign to the courtyard and she leads this little protest that says, we're not with racism and Adidas, and Adidas has problems and Adidas is racist. And she does this every day on her lunch break. She hasn't been fired. She hasn't been fired or anything like that. And initially, Adidas said that they don't, if employees want to go protest, please take your hour lunch break and go protest, and that's fine. Just, and then they were complaining, she was complaining, that they said, but if you're going to protest past the 1 hour we give you for lunch, you're going to need to use your PTO, because we can't just pay you to protest all day. You actually have to come to work. And she says, well, I'm not going to use my PTO to protest your company. You should just pay me the entirety of what I deserve to sit here and protest your company. Adidas, bending over backwards to say, yeah, please, protest if you feel like it's right, but we do pay you, and we need you to come back to work after your hour lunch break. But you can use PTO if you would like to protest, if you really believe, please use PTO. Your job is safe, but you got to use time off, because we can't just pay you to do a job if you're not going to do the job, if you're just going to sit out there and protest us. And they say, no, I'm not doing it. You can't make me use my PTO. You're just going to pay me to protest this company every single day. Now, I would like to point out, Julia Bond has been doing this protest for 3 months. Again, it's August, okay? 8th month of the year. That puts her at the 5th month of the year. That means at the most, Julia Bond started protesting this company at the most 3 months in to her employment at the company. 3 months in, Julia Bond decided that this company does billions of dollars of business a year, has 60,000 employees, has existed for an incredibly long time, that Julia Bond has to stand up for justice at Adidas and apparently all the racism that goes on at that company. This is what the conversation on systemic racism has turned into. People take small examples of racist incidents, blow them up into epic proportions, then blame the entire system for individuals' actions within the system. This guy who made the joke didn't do so through the company of Adidas. He did so on his private Instagram feed. And again, the joke, I think I will say on record, that joke's not racist. I think I've said that very clearly. But even if you think it is, that's a private individual. She didn't go to that individual and discuss anything with him, by the way. She never once had a conversation with that man about his post. Went straight to management about the post, straight to HR. Didn't bother to have a conversation with the guy ever. So, first of all, that's a child. Adults handle problems peer-to-peer. Children run to figures of authority. So she immediately goes to HR about this joke, which is not racist, but claims it is. And then you say, okay, well, there's one example. And then the Confederate flag thing immediately goes to upper management. And again, they have meetings throughout the world about this, saying like, hey, we're sorry. We were using it, it made it through some cracks, and we didn't think about the implications of it. And apologies. Not good enough. Not good enough. Now, there are other people, by the way, who have joined this protest who are saying things, other things that have at least some semblance of credibility. So, for example, the staff, off the top of my head, I believe, I looked this up earlier. Off the top of my head, I think it was the staff in the North America section of Adidas is 4 to 5% black, somewhere around there. And they're saying that that's obviously an example of racism because black people make up 13% of the population. So what did Adidas do? They said, well, we're going to hire 30% of all of the new hires are going to be black or Latino. And the people protesting said, that's not good enough. We need 30% of all the staff to be black or Latino. I don't know what it is they're advocating for right now. No one but black and Latino people should be hired until Adidas is 30% black and Latino. Because what Adidas just said is that we're going to hire 30% of all people to be black and Latino moving forward. What do they want? Overnight change in a company that's existed for years and years and years? Who should be fired to make room for the black and Latino people that should immediately make up 30% of the workforce? Adidas committed. They pledged $120 million to the inner city communities and different various projects. $120 million have been pledged over the past year by Adidas towards furthering the advancement of the black community in the United States. $120 million. Not enough. We're gonna hire 30% of our workforce to be black and Latino moving forward. Not enough. We're willing to have meetings with the leaders of the protests to discuss all the things that they want to do. We're not going to have meetings with you. It's not enough. What is enough? And the people protesting this company right now, it's just insane. They're saying you're exploiting the black community while being racist within your own institutional walls. The black community apparently buys a lot of Adidas in North America. By the way, that company, only 20% of all of Adidas is sold in North America. So to say that is kind of silly because the black community in the United States doesn't support the company of Adidas. It's a German company. Its headquarters is based in Germany. It does most of its sales in Europe. So that's a ridiculous notion right away. But on top of that, the idea that they're exploiting the black community by what? By selling products that they want? For what? How is that exploitation? This is the thing about capitalism. You can't make people buy stuff. If somebody wants something, they will buy it. So if the black community buys Adidas products, how is that exploitation of the black community? They voluntarily buy the products. It means that they like it. That means Adidas is doing a service to the black community by selling them products in which they wish to purchase. Anyway, that's a whole different thing. We talk about the value of capitalism. So anyway, this entire thing, the entire conversation around race in America is so frustrating for so many people because there are problems in the United States. There are discrepancies between the whites and black community that are actually problematic. But attacking phantoms of racism in institutions which are just clearly not racist is such a waste of mental energy, and it sucks up the air in the room for actual conversations about race that need to be had. It's always been my big problem with the question about policing in the United States. There are things we should change to the way that we police in the United States, but the demonization of police and the ridiculous notion that the police are responsible for mass amounts of killings in the black community is just a falsity. You get rid of all racism in police tomorrow, and nothing changes in the black community because it's not a problem that is the cause of discrepancies between the white and black community in the United States. The police are not that cause. That's what this is. This is a waste of time and by an unserious person. I'm sorry if people think that this, and I don't feel bad saying this because I get upset when people exploit a cause for their own personal benefit. That's what this comes across to someone like me. This woman's not fighting for justice. She might even have deluded herself into thinking she is, but she's not. This is not making a difference. She is not Rosa Parks. This is a waste of time and divisive to what should be the goal, which is racial harmony. This is divisive because you get people like myself who look at this and just say, this is just when you're being nonsensical. And it is so frustrating because as someone who detests racism, bigotry, prejudice, these things, I hate it with every fiber of my being. To look at someone hijack the cause for something nonsensical is incredibly frustrating. And the New York Times, shame on the New York Times for elevating this person, getting millions of downloads, millions of views for this kind of perverse ideology. The racial division doesn't get better with protests like this, and it is a shame to watch that to watch it unfold, because it is just, again, there are things that we could do to unite our country and lessen divides between communities, but we have chosen not to go down that path and instead give a bullhorn to the most radical and insane voices in communities, and that's a shame. It really is. And this woman's a prime example on the most popular podcast in the world, one of the most popular podcasts in the world. And it's like that you're going to lead with the best examples of racism at a company you have, and I look at them, I just laugh at both of them. I said, it's just insane. Millions of people are going to listen to how Adidas is racist today because of those two examples. Just nonsense all around, people. It is hard to keep your head on straight these days. All right, we're going to leave it there today. Summary: Adidas, not racist, making good efforts to work with people, making good faith efforts to work with people, to help the black community, to make sure that they're having a diverse workforce, which, by the way, I don't love the idea of just implementing quotas based on race. I think that's kind of perverse. But if you're on the activist side, then you would be like, yeah, Adidas, great, putting in quotas, going to hire more minorities. That's fine. Again, I don't like that, but from an activist point of view, that seems pretty reasonable. So they're pledging money. They implemented actual changes by saying we're going to implement this policy X, Y, and Z, and not enough. Never enough. That's the key. It will never be enough. The people out there like Julia Bond, it will never be enough to satisfy them, ever. And remember that. This is that, I'm going to do a poor paraphrasing, but remember we won't get into it today, but there's a quote I was going to pull up, but I'm actually just not going to do it right now. It's not overly relevant. We'll leave it there today. So I think that is it for the day. Remember, if anyone wants to come on the podcast, we got microphones, we got headphones, we got a very fancy Rode Pro mixer thing. I don't actually remember what it's called, but we got this nice little setup here. And I think next week, we're going to have our first guest on, and somebody volunteer to come on. It's going to be fun. We're going to have a good time with it. But for today, we're going to leave it there. If anyone has any questions, concerns, comments, any other things I can't think of, drop me a line at the email, and please make sure to like and subscribe the video. Always appreciate that. And we will talk to you all later. Tyler Chrestman signing out.